I want to talk first a little bit about classification and grading in the government, because you don't have to understand all of this, but you just need to know that you're going to see, as you look at that example that's passed around, you'll see the vacancy announcement, and you'll see some combinations of letters and numbers in there, GS and CG, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But there are, and when you go to websites like USA Jobs, you can search for status jobs, or you can search for non-status jobs. Status in the federal government means a couple of things. It means that you've either been a permanent employee in the past, which I would say the majority of you probably have not, so you don't have status, or that you are a veteran, which some of you may be. And I say veterans preference, and I have in parentheses, almost always have status, because the federal government has rules about employing veterans, and they have what's called veterans preference points. And so a veteran will get either 5 to 10 points added to their application to put them to the top for their years of service and to the country. So to try to help them to have a competitive advantage, frankly. So veterans can apply under status vacancies. Permanent people who have served on competitive permanent appointments can apply for status vacancies. I would imagine the majority of you who are here today are going to be applying for non-status public vacancies. So that's where you're going to be searching. Where I'm working right now at the FDIC, there are many term or temporary positions, which are non-status positions. So there are many employees who may actually be working in the federal government that don't have status. So the key, most people are looking for permanent jobs that have status. And we're going to say, well, what does status matter? Well, every single vacancy that's posted will be posted, well, most vacancies that will be posted as status and non-status, okay? So if you can apply to the status vacancy, that gives you an advantage because a greater proportion of people are going to be pulled from the status vacancy than the non-status vacancy. So let's say the hiring official says, I want the top 10, the people that scored the highest, I want the top 10, 7 are going to be pulled from the status vacancies, and 3 are going to be pulled from the non-status vacancies. So what does that mean for you with the majority of you applying as non-status? It means that your application has to be absolutely top-notch in order for you to not only get qualified to be, but also to score high enough in the review process that you actually get an interview. And that is one thing that I would also say, that if you get feedback from an HR specialist that says you didn't score high enough to be referred, I have people up in arms saying, I didn't score high enough to be referred. You know, what's wrong with my application? Well, it could be nothing is wrong with your application in that instance, because only the top, you got qualified for the position, and that's the most important thing. And then once you get in that qualified group, then you want to get qualified to the highest degree so that you can get referred. So that might be all gibberish to you at this point, but I just kind of wanted to put that out there, and I'll explain to you a little bit more about the hiring process in a minute. So the Office of Personnel Management, USOPM, came up with this general service, this federal government pay scale, so that they could make sure that all federal agencies were kind of on par with one another. So you will see the GS series or GS system. So GS has 15 grades, and each grade has 10 levels within it. And you need to know, so it's like, well, what can I qualify for? You know, and I will say this, the FDIC, federal governments, agencies have to use the general service scale, but they can call it something else. And at the FDIC, there's acronyms everywhere. GS actually translates into CG, okay? For whatever, they call it corporate grade instead of general service. So, but it's the same thing, it's the same 15 levels. So for that position, you'll notice that it's a CG7, which is the same as GS. But anyway, so most individuals with a bachelor's degree are going to qualify for a GS5 or a CG5 or 7. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then there's the senior executive service, and that's going to be, you can't qualify for senior executive service based on education, and those folks have years and years of experience. So that's the targeted grade level, GS5 or 7, that you're going to be looking for. And if you're curious, if you want to know more about classification and grading, you can go to USOPM's website, and they have a whole section that will illuminate that for you. Yes?
What kind of bump would it be for get a master's?
There you go. Great question, thanks. Nice segue into GS4, associate degree, or 2 years, GS5 or 7, it depends on the agency and the applicant's academic credentials or in their bachelor's degree. So usually a GS7, well, for this position that I'm passing around for you to see, it's a GS7 position, but they require what's called superior academic performance in order to qualify, and that's how you get to the 7 level without having qualifying experience for this particular position. Master's degrees will qualify you at the GS9, PhDs, law degrees at the 9 PhDs or equivalent doctorate at the 11. Okay? So I've had young people applying straight out, and they look at vacancies and they're applying for 11s and 12s, and there's nothing I can do to help you get qualified for that. So that just kind of gives you a range of where you need to be looking for the majority of you, unless you have extensive World of Work experience, which some of you may.